to KCOR's 149th Zoom presentation. We've been doing this for 3 years, 48 times a year, 4 weeks off, and this has been consistent, and the program is continuing for the foreseeable future. Our speaker today is Paul Koch, who's been a long time environmentalist. And he's going to be telling us about something we all know. We only have one planet, and it's kind of crowded, getting that way. So, Paul, just tell us how it was that you got into the UNCED, into the Stockholm Conference on Environment and Development in 1972, I think, long before I'd had a thought about becoming interested in environmental matters. You had a huge lead start on me, and I suspect most people here. So what got you going?
Well, very quickly, I was a University of Waterloo student starting in 1957, one of the first engineering people. 59, I took a co-op term with Procter & Gamble in Hamilton. And I was just beside myself when I saw what was happening to that Hamilton-Burlington Bay with the industry, the Stelco, Dofasco, Firestone, Harvester, P&G, and even the city of Hamilton was dumping its raw sewage into the bay, and there were dead fish all over the place. Fortunately, that's been pretty well cleaned up now. And anyway, that got me interested. And then I was a regional vice president of the YMCA of Canada. And when Stockholm came along, and I wanted to go. And so the president of the Y sent, at that time, I was then a graduate and with IBM. He sent a letter to the president of IBM and asked for me to have 2 weeks off and $2,000 to go. And they said, great, off I went. So that's the story. Okay. Are you there?
Do you want to proceed with your presentation?
Oh, you want me to start the presentation now, John?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say something more. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go. I hope you don't get too tired of seeing my wife, Marilyn, and my two daughters, Susan and Carolyn, because they're in a lot of these pictures, but we'll try and just see past them. Well, the book Collapse is what got me interested in the subject, and they define here what collapse is. And I'll let you read things quickly, as most of you do. But you had to get there. So we flew down over Mexico and then down over the Andes Mountains and ended up in Chile, and spent a few days in Santiago before we went. There's some pictures of Santiago. And off we went to Easter Island. Next stop, the belly button of the planet. I think I heard one of you guys saying about how far it is from everywhere, and that's right, 3,700 kilometers from Chile and 2,100 from the Polynesian Pitcairn. We arrived and flew in, got out of the plane, arrived at our hotel in the dark, and woke up the next morning. The bottom right picture is what we saw at the window. And of course, Easter Island is famous for its 887 moais, these legless human torsos carved out of the volcanic rock, and some very big ones and some smaller ones, and you'll get to see them. Here's the map of the island. Anakanavich up the top is where they believe the first settlers arrived. 66 square miles, 3 volcanoes. The one being where the moais came from, the one where my pointer is. And this was where down here was the bird culture, where a lot of people lived after the first collapse. And the town is currently there now. And so there you go. They believe it was colonized 600, 800 AD, and that the chief came from the Marquesas Islands, And they landed at the Zanakana beach. So it's a beautiful beach. And they built these ahus, as they call them. And they had 11 or 12 territories on the island for the various family groups. And the ahus are ceremonial platforms where they mounted moais and buried the cremated dead. There's, I think somebody mentioned Heyerdahl. He restored the first moai in 1955, and that's at Anakana Beach. And this is now the quarry area. Up here is the place called Tapito Cura. There's the quarry. And then this beautiful Ahu Tanganyika. So this is a couple of interesting pictures here. Here's the rugged volcanic coast. And at the time, they may have erected this one now. I don't know. It was 32 feet tall, weighed 75 tons, but it hadn't been restored. It was just still laying there. And then this beautiful rock that looks like a belly button. They discovered that there were a lot of stone tools from other islands, and they had never found anything from Easter Island in the other direction, which I guess speaks to Easter Island's isolation. Ranu Varaku is the volcano or the quarry where the moais were carved. And it says here, it gives you the impression that the factory shut down and everybody quit and they threw down their tools and that was it. So now you'll start to see the moais, and as we go through the quarry. The young lady who was our host for the first, we were there 7 days. The first 3 days we were being hosted by this lady, Tiari. She claimed to be one of the very few descendants of the original people of Easter Island. She was very good. And then the last 4 days, we rented a car and went to see everything else a second time. Here you see a couple partially carved and moais awaiting extraction. And you say to yourself, how could they ever move those things? That's funny. Oh, okay. Just a moment. There, okay. Something got hit that made it stop. Okay, there are the two moais there. These are a couple of unique ones. This only one that actually had legs was this one that was kneeling, had small ears as well. It was found by Thor Heyerdahl. And then there's the largest moai. How could they ever have moved that? Well, they didn't move it, but could they have moved it? I don't know. Think of the work that went into making all these. That's looking down into the quarry. Now we're looking down to the Ahu Tanganyika. You'll see down, oh, sorry. Oh dear. I can't get rid of that thing. Sorry, folks.
Just use your arrow keys.
Sorry?
Just use your arrow key.
Yeah, I guess I'll quit using it because that's what's causing the problem.
Use the keyboard.
There. Okay. This is the quarry interior. There, we're now looking at Tanganyika. This is on the way right to the top of the mountain. These lava tough stones were used as tools to carve the moais. Very hard rock. There's my bride looking down at the big Ahu at the bottom there. There was a road out of the quarry with roads leading in 3 directions, and another 97 moais are scattered. How did they move the moais? This tells part of the story about why they ended up losing all their trees, because to move them, it was very, very difficult. And roped, and they think that they rolled them on logs somehow. Here's Ahu Tangarika. The Japanese reinstalled these a few years ago. And it was a challenge to raise them up and get them all standing there. There they are. The one with the red hat, those were, you'll see more about the red hats, but they were reserved for they believe for the chiefs. Now, I haven't touched anything else, but the thing is not going right. There it goes. There's a petroglyph in the surface rock. There were several of those pictures. You can see it surrounded by little stones. And there's the Moai headdresses called pukao. Now we go to the Anahanga. I know what's causing my problem now. We go down to Anahanga, the bottom left, Vanapu and Punapau Quarry. And this is a village where the tomb of the first king was. You can see the bottom, there's a long 40-foot long, 10 feet wide walls and roof. Looks like a bit of a canoe. That was their people houses. There's Susan looking at those ones. They had caves in some of the villages. And this is Ahu Vanapu. Here's the one that has to do with, excuse me, Machu Picchu. They believe, some people believe that these walls came from Peru, but they're very thin and not solid blocks. So they've disproven that apparently. There's a pukao, little small moai, and a wall of the Ahu. Looking back up towards a major quarry at the far end of the island. And so these rich iron-rich red Saria or hani found at Punapau used to make the pukaos. They themselves weighed up to 12 tons. There you can see down into the quarry where they, there's still a whole lot of them partly finished sitting there. And the meaning of the pukao is apparently still under discussion at the time we were there in 2007. And Easter Island's population is, when we were there was, well, in 2002, we were there in 2007. So it was 3791 in 2002. As of this year, apparently it's over 8,000. So I don't know where they're putting all the people, but they are. And this is where we go to what's called the Ahu Akivi in the Tahai Archaeological Zone in the town. The left side of the map there. This Ahu Akiva is believed to be the one it's the only one that's not by the water. It's believed to represent the original leaders as they face the Marquesas Islands. This is only the one place on the island where the Moais face the sea rather than face away from it. There they are, the 7 children of the first king. A large cave there. I'm not sure what all the little stones are. I don't think they're tombstones, but they're part of the Ahu. This tough moai with pukao was erected and stored and put there with special eyes by the American archaeologist William Malloy. There's William Malloy's grave, so I guess he stayed there until he passed, and they buried him there. In these stone chicken houses, they found 1,233 of them, largest one being top right, 40 feet by 10 feet. So to 1600 AD, it was first colonized in 600, 800 sometime. Then they built the Ahus for over about 600 years. Population grew. Most likely, they say 15,000 was what it reached. They had 11 or 12 clans and a complex society. And the wood was used for cooking, warmth, cremation, and transporting moais.
Paul,
Yeah,
may I make a request on behalf of one of our participants?
Yep.
Could you leave the slides on the screen long enough
Yep.
that folks who want to read down your text can do that? So
okay.
normally I'm inviting people to speed up, but in this case, I'm inviting you to slow down a little bit,
Okay, Art was making
but not too much.
Yeah, okay. Art wanted to make sure I went fast enough.
Okay.
And you want me to slow down, so I'll go in the middle.
Yes, go, carry on.
So what happened was a collapse. So who cut down the last tree? So what contributed? Well, deforestation, and the red ones there are the worst ones. The deforestation and habitat destruction, human population growth. Obviously, overfishing wouldn't be a problem there. Be some problem with waste management and so on. I'll give some time for people to read this. Okay, that should be good. People can always go to it when Art distributes it again if they want to spend time in detail looking at it. Okay, so we've led to cannibalism. So the collapse, I'll let you read those. Okay. Now we're about to go into a cave where men are eaten. Bottom left there, you can see the stairway you had to walk down to go into the cave. That picture on the bottom picture there is cave art. You can see the birds. It's on the ceiling of the cave. That's the mouth of the cave. Some very interesting lava there. That's from inside the cave looking out. And then as the surviving population reemerged into a new culture, and these little round places where you see palm trees in the circle, those were rock walls built to protect the crops from the elements, apparently. And the people lived up in the top of the western side of the island in Orongo, in these little homes. Here's some of the restored housing at Orongo. And that's the cauldron that's right near where those houses are. There's no moai construction in this area. It's all at the other end of the island, the east part of the island. But what did go here, and I can't see the total wording because of the sign from the software at the top, but basically every year they had a contest. They had to swim out and swim back to become the Birdman of the year and bring back an egg unbroken from the nest there. And that was ceremony was witnessed by Catholic missionaries, just as a residue of Easter Island society, not already destroyed by the islanders themselves, was being destroyed by the outside world. Look back at today's town. Now, Easter Island's discovery, I'll let you read that. Now we have the second collapse. Blackbirding, taking the islanders away to Peru and selling them as slaves. Most died, captivity. Catholic missionaries came, converted people to Christianity. By 1872, there were only 111 islanders remained. And our guide, as I said earlier, claimed to be a descendant of one of them and the earlier people. They introduced sheep there, made it a sheep ranch once Chile annexed to Easter Island, 1888. The islanders revolted. 1966, the islanders became Chilean citizens. Easter Island today. At that time, the time we went, there were 4 scheduled flights per week. Don't know how many there are now, may still be the same. They say there are 100,000 tourists a year. This Sebastian Engelhardt Anthropological Museum was very interesting. We didn't do that as part of our guided tour. We did that on our own. Here's a few scenes in the town. A little bit of boarding there. Cemetery, you can see all the crosses. And these 2 dogs followed my daughter for the longest time. We were on this long walk and they hiked up with us and stayed with us. I don't know how they got back home, but I assume they did. They wouldn't leave though. Every year they have a festival now, honors their cultural heritage. You see the young boys playing soccer, some of them in their bare feet. Local market. I think those statues are in Malloy and maybe or Iredell, although I'm not sure and I can't recall exactly. That's the vehicle we rented for our 4 days on our own. Very good. This was our hotel. Freshwater pool top left, saltwater pool bottom. A hotel taken from down at the pool and then the front entrance to the hotel property at the top right. Some nice restaurants. We went to a show with local entertainment. It's quite interesting. I guess they were doing the dances of the original people. And of course, you have to shop for Moais while you're there. And then we returned to Chile for a memorable and educational experience. So I'll let you read this because this is key. Okay, hopefully everybody's had a chance to get through that. And now let's look at the new factors contributing to collapse. We have the old ones that we looked at earlier, which the deforestation and human population growth was probably the big problem in Easter Island, but all of them were part of the problem. Now we add to that human-caused climate change, buildup of toxic chemicals, energy shortages, and the full utilization of the Earth's photosynthetic capacity. Is humankind up to the challenge? Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed people can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has, as Margaret Mead quote. And I look at K-Corps as a group of men and women who understand the fundamental problem and are really working to do what we can to make sure that things stay for our descendants. One of the things that really concerns me about all our winds, we lost 2 70-foot trees in our backyard last May. In fact, I think it's a year ago today, maybe. But those 2 trees came down, and over the golf course, they lost 1,100 trees. And there are a lot of them that don't look very happy. They're still alive. But I'm not a mathematician, but I recall taking something in differential equations. They talked about differential equations that performed as second-order systems. And when second-order systems reach resonant frequency, they blow up. And I wonder if the winds or maybe represent something like that. Maybe somebody in the audience who's knowledgeable can comment on that. So John, that's the presentation, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Sorry, let me put my video on. Thank you, Paul. A rapid ride through your travels. You did that as a holiday.
Yeah.
But you came back with a message. How do you feel about your message getting out to, well, today you've shared it with the people here. Has it been shared with people who make decisions in government or industry? What do you feel about this experience and what you learned from it and what it means for the current generation, or perhaps more importantly, grandchildren, children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren?
Well, it's a very good question. I have to be honest and say I haven't shown this presentation that many times. And when it was shown, it was largely after I put it together around 2007 and 2010. My grandchildren were here last week from Atlanta. They're 21 and 19 years old now. And thinking about it, I should have showed them this presentation. I didn't do it. So I'm going to resurrect it for some things. But I have not given this presentation to other than a very few groups. And I worry that the real problems are not well understood.
Thank you. Samrat, I neglected to alert you just now. Would you like to turn on your video and unmute and ask your question? And I'll invite anybody else who has thoughts or comments to join the conversation by sending a message to the chat box. So Samrat, over to you. And following you, I'll be going to Art.
Yeah, thanks so much, Paul, for the presentation. It's amazing to know more about the Easter Islands. My question is to you and to everybody else, is that if those people had better technology, would their collapse happen sooner, or would have eventually happened because they destroyed all the trees in the island?
Well, it's a very good question. My guess is that they just outgrew the island, and the number of things they needed the trees to do caused them to not think that they were using them all up. And of course, the moais, making the moais and moving them around is probably one of the bigger contributors to destroying the trees. But I look at Canada now, for example, and you think with all these fires, number one, but also with the logging that's taken place in Alberta, British Columbia, Ontario, Quebec, et cetera, over the last few years, that we're not replacing it as fast as we should, that's for sure.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Art, you're on board, and following Art, I'll be inviting Ted to take the floor.
Yeah, thanks for this, Paul. I know that archaeologists are busy resurrecting prior civilizations and trying to understand, you know, what they lived for and their value systems and what caused them to collapse. Do you know if that sort of activity is still going on Easter Island, or is there, in fact, you know, sufficient number of records where everybody feels confident that they understand what happened?
Well, my guess is that there hasn't been a heck of a lot learned about Easter Island since we were there that they didn't already know. You wonder, with the population going to 8,000 from 3,000 and some, where they're going to put the people. And the whole place now is based on tourism, of course. And I guess it's a pretty small island when you think of the lifestyle that they lived, and so they ended up having a big fight among themselves.
I think the real question is, are there more lessons that we can learn? Because we're going through, you know, a similar process now, and is there, in fact, something that perhaps we should be bringing to our respective decision makers?
Well, that's a good question. I don't have an answer. I spent quite a few years marketing to the federal government of Canada when I was with IBM, and but I'm so long removed from it now, and I did a fair bit of consulting from 1992 to 2004 or 5. But I'm totally out of touch now with what's going on there, other than what I read in the newspaper or see on TV.
Okay, thank you then.
Ted, and after Ted, I'll be going to the Dohertys.
Yeah, this is one of the most interesting case studies on the planet. I've been working lately for a lot of small island developing states who have exactly the same issue front and center, and they become laboratories for how many people doing what can they actually have on the island. And we could do one thoroughly on some of those at some point in future, because some of them are immediately being overwhelmed with tourism to the point where they're saying, don't come anymore. There are others that are actually using water as the limit, saying we can accommodate up to this number, but beyond that, we're not letting anything else be built. And most other states aren't even considering this, they're just letting it grow. By the way, the data you had on Easter is old. They're up to 15,000 in season on the island at this point. And that I'm surprised to see from what you said, that parallels the maximum amount that was thought to happen prior to the collapse. Yeah. So my real question is, under what conditions and types of consumption were they able to do then? And how does that relate to what we're now trying to do on the same island?
Well, the island is the island, and it is what it is. They're either going to screw something up pretty badly, or they're going to level it off and get steady state somehow. I don't know. Recently read something, forget where it was, that suggests that the population of the planet to remain sustainable long-term has to be kept in around the 6 billion mark. And the question is, how does it get from where it is now down there? And there's lots of ways that can happen. When I came home from Stockholm, I've told some of you in the past that we had planned to have 4 children. Those 2 girls you saw were born in 67 and 69. And we were thinking, okay, we only wanted a boy. So we thought we'd have 2 more. I came home from Stockholm and told her that that was it. We're only allowed 2. She's never forgiven me. Well, I shouldn't say that. Yes, but she wanted a boy.
And there's morals in this. I know I got 2 daughters too, and they're the same age exactly as yours.
Oh, really?
And we quit too, and in some ways for the same reasons. But there are the notion is here how much it's also consumption. You know, how well did they live? Did the archaeologists tell us how well they did live when they were stable? I mean, were they at the edge? They obviously had surplus labor that allowed them to put some of it into these immense moai. So I'm puzzled regarding what we can learn from that.
Well, in some ways, it's almost impractical to try and compare something that happened way back then with what's going on now, because they were living in a period where there was virtually no technology on anything. It was just arms and legs. Whereas now we've got artificial intelligence, which scares the hell out of me, but that's another subject.
Thank you.
So Dave Doherty, following David, I'll invite Raymond Lurie to take the floor. Dave.
Thanks, John. Paul, I'm wondering whether you know to what extent the government of Chile compensated the indigenous people of Easter Island for enslaving their ancestors.
I do not.
That's a quick answer.
Sorry, I just don't have any.
It would seem one of the world's current major problems. All the empires really ought to be compensating all the people they enslaved.
Well, it's Peru that they were taken to, but now they're related to Chile, of course. They were taken as slaves to Peru.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Thank
doubt
you very much.
there was any compensation at all.
Thank you.
So, okay, Dave. Over to Raymond Lurie, please.
So thanks, John. The very interesting presentation, Paul. I read Collapse also, and I read Gun, Steel, and Germs, which is a predecessor book, right, and won a Pulitzer Prize actually for Jared Diamond. So fantastic book, and I would recommend it to everybody. Recommend them to anybody who wants to understand, and I have recommended it to to many people over the years. I think it's a great book that that explains why there is no unique human races and why we're all mixtures one of the other, and because of conquest and reconquest and all that, and it explains a lot of stuff about the development of technological society. And so the reason I'm doing what I'm doing today with the Electric Vehicle Council is actually those books inspired me to do something about the problems we're seeing, right? So they're very, very interesting. Actually, I would invite everybody to read both of them. They're really, really insightful. And I thought that, the worldwide society, given all the knowledge we have and all that, we'd be able to avoid going down the same path as Easter Island and other societies actually that have collapsed over time. But apparently we're not that smart. So we'll see how things turn out. Anyways, thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here.
Okay. John Palmer, are you able to open your microphone and turn on your video? While you're doing that, I'll just ask Paul a question, perhaps. Paul, you ended your talk with a quotation, a very positive quotation by Margaret Mead. Subsequent to your earlier work on environmental issues, you served on the City of Ottawa's Environment Committee. That was before Mayor Watson arrived. And you launched the Ottawa Sustainability Fund, which amassed an interesting sum of money, almost entirely as a result of your fundraising. and which now has a grant of roughly $10,000 to distribute to some environmental organization in Ottawa. Are you, how do you, so you finished on a positive note, and you're an engineer, so you do things just like Art, and and that fund will live in perpetuity, I think. How do you feel about the failures of our political world and the successes that are being achieved at the level of the community?
Boy, that's a big question, John. How long have you got?
Well, if you go on too long, I'll mute you. So off you go.
Well, I think that a lot of our politicians work very hard to try and engage the volunteer community to do good things. For example, we started EnviroCenter, and that was funded. I was paid a small consulting fee to write the business strategy for EnviroCenter, which we started. And it's got 40 employees now, and it's doing very, very well as a not-for-profit business. And when it started, Bob Shirelli was mayor at the time. When I approached him, he agreed to put the EnviroCenter office in City Hall, and it was there with a store for some time. Unfortunately, the mayor who replaced Shirelli, remain nameless, although most of you know who he is or was, he shut it down. And so the EnviroCenter had to move out to another location, which it did. So you have, but I think on balance, a lot of the political world wants to do the right thing and work with the voluntary sector and the business sector to tackle some of the problems that are out there. That's kind of one avenue for an answer, but I'm sure there are many more.
Yes. I agree with you. I've had dealings, as many people on this conversation, with politicians, elected people, government people directly. And my observation is that it's a terribly demanding job to serve as prime minister, minister, even if you're only the representative for one riding. And I don't have, do you have any thoughts on how, I mean, one of the things that our political world lacks, it seems to me, is an understanding of science. People who've studied science go through an iteration of a theory, evidence, experiment, and round again. Folks who haven't done that kind of research in geography or the natural sciences, I think in a different way. And one of our problems is not nearly enough folks who are well qualified and experienced in the scientific world are serving in parliaments, councils, and governments. What do you have any feelings about that?
Well, I think in any field you have a variety of people. Some are good at doing what they're doing, and others are just baloneying their way through it, if I could say it that way. Like, for example, in the Canadian political scene right now, I'll tell you, historically, I've been a fiscal conservative and a social liberal all my life. I can't vote conservative now in this country because the guy that's running the thing has never had a real job in his life, and he's too much like Donald Trump. So I think we just have to do the best we can with the people we have. And I think governments too often try and solve problems by throwing more money at it rather than putting a really good solid plan in place. But that's me, and I've been I'm getting older, or I'm getting old, maybe that's a better way to put it. And there are some of the younger people, I find them, some of their efforts and their thoughts very, very right on the mark.
Thank you, Paul. Following John Palmer, I'd like to go back to the Dohertys. John Palmer, take the floor, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, my question was about possible comparison of Rapa Nui, this really oddball tourist location. It's easy to understand why they can have an economy that's practically totally dependent upon the crowds of curious people who have heard about this place all their lives and take a notion to actually go. It's weird. Anyway, the Maya area, Yucatan, Guatemala, a carpet of jungle from horizon to horizon. And we know about the Mayan peak about 1,500 years ago and so on. And what the heck happened to them? And scanning now shows they had practically a conurbation of cities, temples, roads laid out. They were a going concern. And what happened to them? What notion I've heard is something that came up thinking of Rapa Nui and the people there just chopping down all their trees. And the Maya seemed to have figured out how to do successful agriculture in a karst landscape with subterranean drainage and really not much rain. And is this a parallel that the Maya just multiplied and succeeded until they exceeded the capacity of their own homeland to support their economy? It leads me to a broader reflection that we shouldn't think of a cartoon version of analysis blaming all of our problems on capitalism, because these are pre-capitalist societies and they seem to have been just as stupid. It's people. We're not speaking in the aggregate. We're not quite up to the tasks we set ourselves. And we struggle with education. And like Margaret Mead says, maybe a few of our real ace figures can set things straight, but they're only a handful. And the Mayans just kept running their farms, and the people on Rapa Nui just kept on obsessively making these statues. So, you know, humanity is, we're a weird bunch of folks on our third rock from the sun. And it's happened before and it'll happen again, I guess. So there's
one of the things that's intrigued me the last few years is, you know, when I was a kid, the universe was our sun, and was it 9 planets, with Pluto being the little guy way out the other, and nobody knew where it went beyond that. But now they start talking about photographs of stars that are so many millions of light years away. And I'm overwhelmed. I can't even comprehend the size of the universe. There can't be a brick wall out there somewhere, so it must be infinite. I'm just at awe. Has it always been here forever? What started it? Who figured it all out? I guess that's what our God must have done that. And it's very, very fascinating.
Isn't it a conclusion from Einstein that if we kept going out to the end of the universe in a straight line, we'd actually loop back to our starting point, that space is curved?
Maybe.
We just can't notice this from our minuscule little corner.
But imagine these photographs they have now, these things that are millions of light years away. Just, I'm sure people like Ted Manning have much better thoughts on that than I do.
Thank you. Jean, you'll be the next to speak, and I want to invite anybody else who would like to add to this conversation to send me a chat right away, and we'll come to you. Jean, over to you.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Paul, for a very interesting presentation. I have a couple of questions related to the actual construction of the moai. The first one was, were the moai constructed at just a particular period in the culture of Easter Island, or was it spread out through the whole time that they were there?
I'd have to go back to my slides, but I think they started building them a couple hundred years after they arrived there.
Okay.
And kept building them until the whole place fell apart.
Okay. And by that time, the related question is, by that time, I'm assuming all 12 tribes were already on the island at that point. And were the moai constructed in a cooperative way by all of the tribes, or were they things that were a competition? Can I have the biggest one? Can I, what sort of way, and what was the reason for the building of them? Because they appear to be quite an important part of their culture, but it's sort of like looking at Stonehenge and realizing that it was built over many, many years at very many stages and for various different reasons. But I was wondering if the same thing was true for the moai.
Well, there's a lot of speculation, of course, but as the presentation says, they had 11 or 12, I'll call them villages, like a pie. They divided the island up, and there was a group of people, and apparently almost all of them related one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
But they nevertheless had their own little fiefdom, and I guess they probably competed a bit to see who could build the best ahu and who could with the most moai on it. And I imagine that one that's 70 feet long or so weighs 200 and some tons. How could they ever have moved that? I don't care how many men you've got.
Yeah.
I don't think they could. But
So,
there were some big ones that they had standing up.
So do you think that the construction of the moai contributed to the demise of the civilization then?
Well,
Other than directly or indirectly through the loss of the trees?
my guess is it kept a lot of people busy. And maybe food was not a problem because of the fishing would never be a problem for them.
Uh-huh.
And,
Okay.
so they probably were able to catch all the fish they need, and they probably had a few chicken farms there and so on.
Okay.
So maybe it just was jealousy, and who knows what caused them to finally rebel and become cannibals and so on.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. See, I don't pretend to be an expert. I'm only a guy that went there 23 years ago and took a whole bunch of pictures and read a few things and put that presentation together.
I understand completely, and I think that what you've done was really interesting, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Samrat, you put up a point. Would you like to take the floor for a moment?
It's not a point, it's just like a question. I had asked, like, there was like something that was mentioned about the Mayan society bit. Since recently I've read a book based on that, my question was that if like the society which was on this island was, let's say, tribal or top down, it would be also, how do you say, like the gentleman pointed out, like right now society is really foolish. Back then also it could have been really foolish in terms of like just going on and on with the same thing and not realizing that it's leading to collapse.
Okay, so folks, we've had a whirlwind travelogue and some things to think about. I had a birthday recently, and my youngest son gave me this, which I thought I should probably wear today, but I forgot to put it on, which I think captures in very basic terms what you're talking about, or the message, one of the messages you took away from your journey many years ago. So with that, may I turn to Jean Doherty to take the floor, please.
Again, thank you very much, Paul, for a very, very interesting presentation. Easter Island has always been a place that I was very interested in as a child, and archaeology, my own particular discipline of paleontology, is something related. Archaeology, anthropology, paleontology were always things that were of interest to me. So I truly appreciate having a presentation that's sort of along the lines of my own heart. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate that very much.
Oh, you're welcome. I hope I didn't go too fast, but I think some people were a little worried it'd take too long to do that many. So maybe I went faster than I should have been.
Oh, no, that's not a problem. So thank you very much. And for those who are listening to this after the fact or are still online, I would encourage you to go to the canadiancorps.com, our website, so that you can find more information about this particular talk and other videos that we have presented. They can be found on the Stay Informed part of our website. Sign up for that, or go to the video tab and do a search on the various videos that we've got, and you can find information on all the various presentations that we have given. Also on our website, you can find out more information about our society as well, KCOR, and as a charity, you can make a donation to us, or you can become a member if you're interested and find out more information at our website. Again, thank you very much to everybody for coming today, and I look forward to seeing everyone again. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane.